Listen, it's really exciting conversations that have taken place here at the Africa Investigative Journalism Conference here, Desiree. Thank you so much for coming to us. We've already had the keynote address that was delivered by BBC Africa Eye that essentially shared some of their work that they've done investigating the abduction of children in Nairobi. And then, of course, there's been conversations about journalism and the metaverse, essentially looking at how journalism can start going fully digital and really entering what many call the metaverse, which is the upcoming future of the digital world and universe, really. And then, of course, a lot of conversations around health data and how that has been processed by investigative journalists, particularly with the lessons that have come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We spoke a little bit earlier to Professor Anton Harber, who is the convener of the Africa Investigative Journalism Conference that has seen journalists from across the continent converge here on Wits University in Johannesburg. And the most fascinating discussions about what investigative journalists have been able to unearth on the continent as they continue their work. And let's get some of those stories now. I am now joined by Mr. Benon Oluka speaking to us all the way from Kampala, who is now in South Africa. He is the Africa editor for the Global Investigative Journalism Network, a multimedia journalist from Uganda. Mr. Benon, a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us firstly why it's important that you came to South Africa to attend this event.
Thank you for having me. We've come to South Africa because one, journalists can no longer work independently. Most of the stories that are happening are in our countries, in our local jurisdictions, spread wide and far across the continent. So we come here not just to learn from others, but to seek opportunities for collaboration. We're looking for fellow journalists around the continent who are doing similar stories, who have better resources and tools that we can collaborate with to do the best investigative journalism that we can do.
Well, what have you found about where investigative journalism is going on the continent? I touched earlier on the impact that collaborative efforts have had in South Africa, where Namibian investigative journalists have worked with South African investigative journalists to unpack and find and unearth some of the big stories that are taking place in the country, like the Pala saga. Are we seeing more and more of that on the continent, these collaborative efforts and information sharing?
Yeah, collaborations are bringing out some really good investigative stories that would otherwise not have been possible to do if somebody was operating within sort of their own environment. So we've had, for instance, myself, I have done an investigation into genetically modified food. I collaborated with a journalist in South Africa, Andy Swa, and a journalist in Burkina Faso. Those three countries have had different fortunes in an attempt to introduce genetically modified food. South Africa has had relative success. Uganda has had a controversial attempt to put in place the laws that would allow for development and introduction of GMOs into the country. Burkina Faso had a botched attempt to introduce GM cotton because the quality that was brought was so bad that it ended up reducing not just the quality but also the production. So in the end, they had to revert back to the organic cotton that they were having before. So those kinds of stories where you provide the context, a much more rounded understanding of what's happening regarding a particular issue is what's happening with the kind of collaborations that we're doing. Yeah. Then the second thing that you get to see happening with investigative journalists around the continent is that we are developing our own tools for doing investigations, for putting together data. Oxpeca's Environmental Journalism Center, for instance, has a wild eye tool which monitors arrests, seizures, convictions of people involved in wildlife crime, wildlife trafficking. You have tools coming out of Nigeria, tools coming out of Kenya, where they are monitoring all corruption scandals right from independence. Yeah. Those tools were not available to journalists before, but now they are becoming available to them because they are developing them on their own.
Yeah, well, I want to speak to another investigative journalist who is also from Uganda, joining us here at the Africa Investigative Journalism Conference, who's worked on some really fascinating stories, a good colleague as well of Mr. Oluka. Thank you so much for joining us now. We're joined by Carol Kasuja from New Vision. She is a multimedia journalist from Kampala, Uganda. Carol, thank you so much for joining us. Why are you here at this conference?
I'm here to improve my skills and to interact, because of late I've been in the field for so long, so I need also to gear up my skills, to learn more, to share my experiences, and also to get to hear what's happening.
I think what's interesting about investigative journalists and the work that you do is the brazen bravery that comes with being an investigative journalist. I mean, you've put yourself into some very dangerous situations, many times undercover. I mean, you told me earlier about the examples, for instance, of, how you learned about mental health hospitals and how mental health patients are treated. We know that we've had a life esteem crisis here in this country. You went undercover to uncover that story in Uganda. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
No, I haven't yet. That one I haven't. For mental health.
Yes.
I've gone for HIV results. In Uganda, people sell HIV results. Let me give you an example. If someone wants to, maybe they want you to give your HIV results, and they tell you, go and do a test. If I know I'm sick, I'll go and buy those results, and I bring for you the sheet that, hey, I'm okay, I'm negative. Yet I know that I'm positive.
And you went and pretended to buy HIV results to unearth the story?
Yes, I did. I did that to in Boyogere, it's a suburb in Kampala. And I was able to get the results in just 5 minutes at less than 5,000, which is $50, right? Yeah.
Were there any investigations that came out of that? I mean, where you've got syndicates that are selling negative HIV results in Uganda and you unearth that story, one would hope that the authorities would then go back and look at that story as well and investigate and crack down.
Yeah. The ministry, the government spokesperson, Ofono Pondo, he picked interest in that story and they investigated. They went to see the place, the clinic in Boyogere, but I never followed up. I don't know what happened next. Mm-hmm. But government picked interest.
Another interesting story where, and this is where we talk about the brazen bravery of investigative journalists, an investigative journalist who goes undercover pretending to be a pageant queen. Tell us about that story.
It was very interesting. So I pretended. Miss Uganda put out a call for girls who wanted to be Miss Uganda. So I went. They wanted girls of height. The height had to be 6. So I went and I contested. I went through. And I contested for Miss Uganda. I was in the boot camp for 1 month.
And what did you learn?
I found out that there's a lot of jealousness among the girls. Each girl feels like, hey, I should win the car. Even the organizers, sometimes they place their own girls. For you who contest, you just follow. But for them, they know that this is the winner. So there's a lot of corruption, I should say, in all these things.
Very, very interesting. Well, I mean, at the end of this conference, what would you like to come out of this? When you go back to Kampala, what would you like to take back with you?
I'm picking ideas. I've picked a lot of story ideas from this conference. So far, I've attended the women training, and I've picked like 4 ideas from there. So I'm going back with ideas to investigate so that
We've talked about the bravery. Just quickly before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about the safety element of being an investigative journalist. I mean, we talk a lot about the threats to the lives of investigative journalists, the attacks even on social media. I mean, what is it, your message, what you've gone through where that is concerned, and your message as well about that? Okay,
for me, safety first. So when I get an idea, I have to brief my editors. I don't do anything when my editor is not aware. So, and I don't, when I'm going undercover, I don't put my face there. So I have to cover myself also. I have to inform someone that, hey, I'm going here, so you know what's happening. So that if I delay, they can come out and say. The other thing is when I'm doing undercover, I don't just show my face. I don't tell everyone that, hey, I'm going to do this story. No, it is my story. Safety first. So I have to look out for myself. I have to protect myself alongside my editors. So I inform people who are concerned, who I know that will not reveal that I'm doing these stories. I update my editors, my supervisor, that, hey, this is where I've reached, this is how far I've gone. And also personally, I have to look out. I don't take things for granted. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. That there, Carol Kasuja, multimedia journalist from Kampala, working with New Vision, coming all the way to South Africa to attend the Africa Investigative Journalism Conference here at Wits University. Lots of learning that's taking place, and we're going to continue bringing it to you as well. And of course, on Sunday, on Media and Society as well, we'll give you an in-depth look at the conversations that are coming out of this conference.